Today, we're diving into the incredible journey of a Boricua, a person from Puerto Rico. And this isn't just any story. It's about how our family history can literally write our destiny. And we're going to follow one man's unbelievable path from Puerto Rico all the way to Africa, guided by what he calls a generational blessing.
So let's start with a big question, the one at the very heart of this story. How is a life's journey written before it even begins? It's this idea of destiny and legacy that we're going to unpack right now.
All right, let's rewind the clock. We're going back over a century to a small town in Puerto Rico called Arroyo. This is where it all starts. This is where the family's legacy, their blessing, was literally forged in the heat of the sugarcane fields.
So what exactly is this generational blessing? Well, this quote lays it all out. For this family, it was a set of core values passed down: fighting for social change, being an entrepreneur, honesty, generosity, and a drive for greatness. You see, this isn't just about a family tree, it's a mission statement.
And here are the people who started it all. You have Julian Colon Lebron, a tall black man, an organizer for the sugarcane workers. And then you have his wife, Nimi Martha Rivera, a tall white woman, a matriarch and a restaurant owner. Now, what's fascinating is that back in the early 1900s, a union like theirs wasn't really that unusual in the Caribbean. They were a true power couple. And they weren't just a power couple, they were pioneers. Their restaurant, it was basically what we'd call a social enterprise today. The idea was simple, but kind of revolutionary. If you could afford to pay, your money helped provide hot meals for anyone who couldn't. Think about that, a nonprofit model way back in the early 1900s.
So that's the foundation. Now let's see how that blessing gets passed down to the next generation. It's time to meet a larger-than-life figure, the legend of Guelito, the man who became our author's greatest role model.
And here he is, Juan Colon Rivera, better known as Guelito. I mean, just look at this photo. You can feel the purpose, the thoughtfulness. He was a visionary, a skilled mechanic, and absolutely the rock of his family. Guelito's influence was just immense. He was up at 5 a.m. every single day. He had this saying that strong foundations aren't just for building houses to survive hurricanes, they're for building a life. And get this, he was a storyteller, a historian who spoke of 11 different types of black people, connecting his family's story back to their African roots in Yoruba and Angola. The man was so respected that people in his town just called him brother.
And this story says it all. A man once tried to challenge him, asking, "What color are you, black man?" Guelito's answer was simple: "I am lila color." Lila actually became his nickname. It was his way of saying, "You don't get to define me, I define myself." Just brilliant.
You know, his sense of purpose was so strong, so complete, that he even planned his own farewell. What you're looking at are his final wishes, written in his own hand. He lived his life with intention, right up to the very end.
And his legacy is just perfectly captured by his funeral. It wasn't some quiet, somber event. No, it was a massive street celebration in his hometown, filled with bomba en plena, the traditional Afro-Puerto Rican music. It was a life so loved that his entire community came out to literally dance him home. Of course, a legacy like that doesn't just stop. It gets passed on. So next up, we meet the author's father, Naco, and he had his own way of teaching, a very different, much more strategic style. Okay, this story is just fantastic. Nico teaches his son to play chess, but, and this is the key part, he never, ever lets him win. That frustration builds a fire in the boy. So his dad gives him a tool, a chess strategy book. The kid dedicates himself, studying for hours every day, until finally around age 14 or 15, he wins. It wasn't about the game. It was a masterclass in strategy, dedication, and what it really means to earn a victory. But Naco's lessons went way beyond the chessboard. When his son asked him a simple question, how can Puerto Rico have two flags, the American one and the Puerto Rican one, Naco gave him a philosophical answer that would change his life. He said, "You are a citizen of the world." That one sentence planted a seed that would define everything.
And he really practiced what he preached. He brought the entire world right into their home. There was yoga from California, music from Bolivia and Peru, and they learned to cook international food. But here's the twist. For all this global culture, there was one continent that was conspicuously absent. He never played music from Africa, a place that would become so central to his son's life.
So now we turn to the author himself. With these powerful legacies from his grandfather and his father, how did he figure out his own place in the world, starting right there in Puerto Rico?
You know how high school is, right? Everybody kind of fits into a clique. Well, his was a perfect snapshot of Puerto Rican society. You had the rockeros, the rock music fans, playing handball, the salseros dancing in the corner, the atletas, the jocks, by the entrance, and of course, the chess players.
But our guy, he refused to pick a corner. He moved between all of them. One day he's at a chess tournament, the next he's camping on some remote island or doing civil air patrol. He was already living out his father's advice, becoming a citizen of the world right there in his own high school.
But there was another motivation, a more painful one. It turns out that being left out of certain family trips because of discrimination created this deep, burning hunger inside him to see the world. So what started as a negative thing actually became the fuel for his life's journey. And that brings us to the final chapter, the dream of Africa. This is where all the different threads of this story, the family history, the search for identity, all those life lessons, finally come together in a way no one expected. Life has a funny way of working out, doesn't it? His dream, his plan, was to work in economic development in Latin America. But fate, or maybe that generational blessing, had a totally different path in mind. He would end up spending the next 25 years of his life in Africa. And if you want to see some beautiful symbolism, check this out. This fish is a balaja from his home in Puerto Rico. It looks almost identical to a fish he would later find in Africa called the gurapao. It's this perfect, unexpected little bridge between the world he came from and the one he was destined to find. And his journey came full circle. Back home, there was this cultural pressure to improve the race by marrying someone white. He challenged that norm, fell in love with his wife Apo, and fell in love with the continent of Africa itself. In doing so, he was fulfilling the deepest part of his family's legacy, fighting for change and embracing a bigger world. Which really leaves us with this one final thought. His story shows us that our past, our own generational blessing, gives each of us a map. So the only question left is, where is your map telling you to go